Hi, this is Will from Unique Capture. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make your white backgrounds properly white. In the studio you find sometimes that the background isn't quite as white as it might be. In this little example I'm showing on the screen here, we're using lights at the back to blow the back out, but down here where the shadows are falling in or where the light's not getting round, it's not quite properly white. And what we need to do is see if we can't make that as white as possible. Now, before we start, I need to make sure that you can see all the menus that I can see. So if you go to the Windows options up here, make sure you have a tick next to Layers, Application Bar, Options and Tools. In that way you'll be able to see these tools I've got here. Yours may appear in various parts, you can just drag them around. You should be able to see all these little options at the top here, and you should be able to see this bit here, which is your layers palette. Before I start, the one thing that I always do, which I find is quite important, is to make a copy of this background layer, just in case we do anything that it basically damages or destroys the picture in any way we didn't wish to do. We can always get back. So on the Mac it's a Command J, on the PC it's a Control J. So I'm going to do a Command J as I'm on a Mac, and you see we now have a new layer. What I'm going to do now is I want to remove this area here, but do it reasonably quickly, this area here that's showing not quite white. Now, to do that, I'm going to come over to this tool here. If I do a right click on there, you'll see we've got options on this tool. We have Dodge, Burn and Sponge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the Dodge tool because that makes things lighter. The Burn tool makes things darker. So let's select the Dodge tool. Don't worry too much about what these things are doing. If you just follow along and use what I'm doing here. From this menu here, I want you to make sure that, sorry, wrong menu. This menu here, I want to make sure you've got the hardness set to 0. We want a really soft brush. We don't want any nasty hard edges. Click out of there. In this menu here, I want you to make sure you've selected the highlights. That's the light parts of the picture. And in this on here, the exposure, I want to make sure you've got that set to around about 25-26%, something like that. That should do the trick. And also make sure this box is not checked. So you want to make sure it's not checked. Okay. Right, now then I'm going to increase the size of my brush that I'm going to start dodging with. I can do that by using the close square bracket, or I can just go to this menu here and I can simply increase the size of my brush, whatever I want it to be. In my case, I'll just press the close square bracket on the keyboard and that'll open it up to a size, whatever size I want. What I need to do now is I just left click and hold, and then I can just rub away all these areas here fairly readily, and that goes to white. I'm going to zoom in by doing a Control or Command plus sign to show you that basically if I come right down here, I can reduce. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. I'm going to show you that I can actually get pretty much really closely into what's going on here. I don't have to worry too much about getting overlapping a little bit on some of the dark areas because they're dark and they're not highlights, so they won't get affected too badly by this brush. Don't go crazy over those areas, but you can actually just come around here now fairly readily and you can start brushing these bits of non-white background away, if you will. I'm doing this quite quickly to show you. You might want to take a bit more care. Reducing the size of my brush here to get close in here so I don't have to overlap too much over the boots, because I don't want to start increasing the brightness too much. And if you're really finicky, you can get right in here, get down and reduce the size of your brush, and then just get right in here and start dodging away all these bits and pieces of non-white background that you don't want. So you just carry on and you just go around all the bits and pieces. Now, on my screen I can see the areas that are dark and the areas that are pure white, but it may be in some cases you can't quite identify exactly where it's not pure white to start with. It may look like it is, but often it isn't. A quick way to determine this is to come down to this area here, which is an adjustment layer. Click on there, select levels, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, if I get this right, going to darken the whole picture off by sliding this up to the right. And now we can start to see all these areas here that we may not have been able to see before. I'm going to leave it around about there. You can just kill that now, and that will remain in there. We can switch this on and off to see where we're going. This adjustment level layer is only going to affect the layer below. So with it switched on, we'll select that layer below again. With our dodge brush still selected, I'm going to increase that in size a little bit. I'll show you what we can do now. We can start dodging away. Be careful not to overlap too much. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean you're not damaging the that arm there. I can come right in here. I can get this more. I can dodge away some of these bits and pieces quite quickly, and I can turn this off to see if I've done a good job. And you can see that we now have a means of being able to go around our picture and remove all the bits of background that we thought maybe were white, but by putting on that adjustment levels layer, we can see that in actual fact they weren't white. And you can take your time. I'm going at this a little bit on the quick side, perhaps just to show you the technique, but you should take your time a little bit more. It's certainly a lot easier than painting with a white brush, that's for sure. You can get rid of all this. Once you've gone around the main areas, you can, if you wish to speed things up, select a white brush and then just paint all these bits and pieces out. Let's do that. I've got a white brush here, I think. Yep. Quick way to get to the white brush while I'm mentioning while we're on this is if you press D on the keyboard, that will automatically give you a black foreground and a white background. If you press X, it'll swap the foreground and the background over. In this case, I'm going to go for a white foreground. Select my brush. Make sure, in this case, you've got the normal mode selected. I'm on 100%. Still a 0% hardness brush I'm using. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. I'm going to paint all out these regions now that I don't want to be non-white, shall we say. And while I'm at it, I'm going to paint out parts of the studio that crept into the picture that we don't want to see. Zoom out a little bit, make sure we've got all those bits and pieces selected. And what I'm going to do now is turn off this layers level, the layers adjustment. And we can see now it looks pretty white. However, let's just check. Double click on the adjustment layer, this area here. Let's really push this now and make sure there's nothing crept in there. And oh, lo and behold, look, we've got some bits and pieces. I'm going to kill that we didn't quite get. Now, if they're away from the main subject, you can just continue by selecting the layer below again with your white brush. If they're away from the main subject, as I say, you can do this and you can just knock those out like this. I've got a little bit here which is a bit close in, so I'm going to go back to my dodge tool, zoom in, and I'm just going to dodge these bits out of here just to finish off the job there quite carefully. And I think we're perhaps about there. What I can do now is switch off the adjustment layer, and that looks to me like we've got a pretty cleaned out background. Finally, I'm just going to grab this, do a left click and hold. I'm going to drag that into the bin because we no longer need that. And now, if you switch off this layer here, just by selecting the layer, you'll be able to see the before and after we started this process. Before and after, we now have a nice clean background. That's it. Thanks.